Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Novice to Legendary. In this series, I talk about my journey as a beginning role player as I go from being novice to legendary. So, anyways, at this point, we've talked about just starting, throwing a character together, and kind of a little bit of what to do on your first few sessions. Maybe like the first 2 or 3 or what have you. So, at this point, you've been able to observe how the party interacts and maybe hopefully pick up on a few places, a few spaces, spheres of influence, however you'd like to put it, where your character can fit in. And if it isn't immediately obvious, here's a few ideas and a bit of how I kind of wound up doing these. Some of these were just completely on accident. So for one thing, I've talked a bit before about this other character in the group, Jayag, the turtle, who is very naive, very childlike, and extremely clueless. And well, in the first few sessions, I was just kind of watching and laughing hysterically because some things he said and did were just absolutely off the wall ridiculous, and we all love him for it. What I've been noticing though is everybody had been going with the flow of Jayag. He would do something goofy or childlike, and very much in the type of character he was playing. And most everybody would kind of just roll with it, maybe laugh a bit. So yeah, I don't really want to be part of this group, but I've grown pretty attached to this turtle. I kind of like the guy. The only real exception up until I came along was this other character, Daggerland, who is this blood hunter and like the edgelord to end all edgelords. So much so that he is kind of taken aback and just didn't know what to do about Jag actually considering him a friend and whatnot. It was actually kind of funny seeing the two of them play off each other because they are very much polar opposites. So anyways, I noticed that there wasn't necessarily a gap where somebody was actually calling Jayag out on his what some would call innocence and childlike naivete. Shearsam took to calling just freaking stupidity. And it all started with, Jayag just shouting in the middle of this inn after he requests some leaves to eat. And the innkeeper says, well, I've got some greens. He starts going, how do you eat a color? I can't even fully do the voice with the inflections. We'll have to get Nick on here so I can give a little demo. Or you can actually just watch some of the sessions yourself, because Jag is a very vocal, childlike turtle. Yeah. So anyways, this became my opportunity to kind of step in and do a bit of what Matt Mercer has called mage-splaining. Although in this case, he wasn't actually mage-splaining magical things, just very mundane things like the fact that somebody saying greens means he's talking about leaves and leafy vegetables. And throughout the whole session, just kept cutting in and having to explain things to Jag, and eventually I just started going, oh, somebody else explain to the turtle, he's giving me a headache. And actually, doing this. And so that kind of set a precedent for the relationship between Shearsam and Jag, and it kind of put in an extra little, a very different dynamic from how the rest of the party had been interacting up to that point. And of course, everybody absolutely loved it. So, one way you can find ways to kind of fit in with the group is to maybe find some commonly running, relationship trope in the group and just kind of run a bit counter to it. The only thing I would caution is, make sure it's not necessarily the point where it's actually disruptive to the gameplay or to the group. A bit of friction's good. But also try to make sure it kind of works with some of the options you've taken for your character. Like in 5th edition D&D, you start off by picking out different personality traits and bonds, ideals, flaws. Try to make however you interact with the other characters kind of fit in with that, especially if you're trying to be a bit of the contrarian, like with Shearsm calling Jag out on his childlike, let's just call it what it is, stupidity. But it's endearing stupidity. There's that. There's also some more other ones, probably some more obvious ones would be if there's any kind of like skill or any sort of proficiency gap, like maybe you're the only one who happens to have any sort of real proficiency in Arcana or Medicine or whatever type of skill you have for your character in the game. Underwater basket weaving, I don't know. That's kind of an obvious one, but there's going to be an opportunity for you to shine in that respect. There have been a number of times already where Shearsm has been like the resident Arcana specialist. Wizard, mage, splaining, it just kind of goes with the territory, and I did pick, Arcana as one of his skill proficiencies, and he just has a pretty high intelligence score already. So there have been a few times where he's been called on to identify what kind of magic item is there. He's also stepped in to kind of identify different spells and schools of magic and whatnot. To try, some of it was actually to try and work out some issues from his backstory, which we will be discussing backstory very soon. But then even like second session, maybe third, we had this incident where one of the characters in the party, actually my brother's character, Baheshtor, actually had his intelligence score trained basically to 0. It became just a... And he was actually having fun with it and doing things that were actually kind of made everybody a little uncomfortable, but laugh hysterically at the same time. And everyone was trying to figure out how to reverse it. And we wound up doing a little bit of metagaming, but it actually kind of fits the story. Kind of helped it along more, where we just kind of went, okay, which one of us characters has the highest Arcana score? And sure enough, that was Shearsm. So he gets to do the role, and everybody else just helps. And that kind of helped things move along, where we were like, okay, now we know how to get Baheshtor's brains back. And eventually we did. So, there's that. There's also, of course, if your character speaks a particular language that not everybody else does, well, there's a very good chance that you will have an opportunity to shine in that respect. And you will become the go-to guy for Draconic or Infernal or Russian or Andromedan computer stuff. So there's that. And then there's also just the idea, there's also just words have escaped me. Well, there's also bits of your backstory. When you're revealing backstory, you don't want to do it all at once. Because, for one, your backstory is probably going to involve some big issue that you're trying to work out, and while the rest of the party hopefully is willing to help out with it, you also don't want to treat the rest of the party like your personal shrinks, unless you're willing to fork over several gold, several gold an hour or whatever for your character's therapy sessions with the rest of the group. Does that, ask for help and input on solving whatever issue in your backstory is causing you to actually go out on adventures. Offer to help others somehow with their problems somehow. And then there's also, going back to the whole skill and proficiency things and filling in skill gaps. Maybe it's not necessarily filling in skill gaps in the party, although you could, again, you could definitely do that. Maybe it's also a matter of just filling in skill gaps between characters. For instance, a few sessions back, after fulfilling his role as the resident mage splainer, Shirzim identifies this wand that an enemy wizard was using, and just as he's saying what it is, Jayag takes it away from him and puts it in his bag. So, of course, I tried to work out how I could actually get that wand back. Not necessarily out because Shirzim actually has any practical application, but just because the fact that it was a magic item and it was taken from him, and he wanted it back. So eventually, and I even played it up like this, where Shirzim actually offers to teach Jayag how to read and write in exchange for this wand of web, this wand that they picked up. And played it up like Shirzim knows he's going to regret this. How am I going to teach him how to read? I can barely teach him that greens means leafy vegetables. So there's that. And then of course this also became a bit of a bonding moment for Shirzim and Jayag after all those sessions where they kind of butted heads, although most of the head butting was on Shirzim's part, which thankfully wasn't literal, because with those horns of his on his head, that would probably hurt like the dickens. So anyways, besides Shirzim teaching Jayag how to read and write, Jayag started teaching him the fine art of tracking. Because Jayag is a ranger, and rangers track. So there's that. So it could be, you teaching somebody else something that you're already proficient at, even if it's something that everybody ideally would be, but maybe they decided to play it differently, especially if they have like a low IQ intelligence score, like Jayag does, or like Grog from Critical Role, where neither of them really knew how to read, but they were trying to learn. So that kind of gives you more opportunities to fit in with the group and to develop different relationships and bonds with other characters. Or, and this can be a really fun one, maybe it's something that because of your class you already should be proficient in, but you decide that another character needs to teach you how to do such and such thing. Now, for instance, 5e D&D, wizards are proficient with light crossbows. Just right out of the gate, it's one of the few weapons they actually get to use with any sort of real skill or facility, although they also get quarterstaffs, and Shirzim has been absolute rubbish with his quarterstaff so far. So even though there was that, just kind of the interaction, and it kind of fits with with Shirzim's character and upbringing, in that he probably did not get much exposure to different kinds of weapons, light crossbows included, even though he's a wizard and he should have proficiency in it right out of the gate. But this all kind of sprang from when Shirzim bought his crossbow and some bolts, and he was actually holding the bolts in his hands and went and just kind of realized, oh, I should probably have something to put these in. I don't need to be carrying them around everywhere. So then he actually gets to buy, a bolt pouch, which, group decision making there. We decided that Shearson was initially going to wear like a fanny pack, which would probably be very uncomfortable with those bolts, digging into the thighs and your thighs and everything. And Beheshtor, my brother's character, fighter, who is proficient with all of the weapons, seems like, actually winds up having to teach Shearson how to use a crossbow. How to properly wear the bolt pouch, how to actually, load and prime the crossbow and everything. And so, even though he should have known how to do it already because of just class features, we decided to kind of twist that around just for a good little bit of story, mainly just for a good bit of laughs. So that actually gave another character an opportunity to be a mentor to Shearson. And some other things have come up where Beheshtor has been, teaching Shearson how to do different things to kind of help him to more function better as a member of the group. So you can have that. Even if the rules say, you have proficiency in this, maybe play around with it. Say, no, my character's had a sheltered upbringing, or maybe even though I'm a wizard, maybe I just didn't pay very good attention in light crossbow class. Maybe he was too busy, eyeing the hot blonde elvish girl at the mage's academy or something like that, when he should have been paying attention to basic crossbow maintenance. So you can do it that way. You can do things that way. And sometimes maybe you could even, and this is also very good, just find ways to get the party involved in something. Be careful about this, but find ways to get the party involved in something like some job, some quest, or whatever, maybe without necessarily fully consulting the party about it. If you've got a good group, that means it's probably going to be a lot of, why did you do that? And there'd be, some friction. And next thing you know, you're actually kind of starting to interact with everybody more. Again, Shearson's done a little bit of that. We actually are on this long quest that's recently started wrapping up because everybody was kind of debating this course of action with this wizard who had offered to pay them for a delivery job, and Shearson just went, "We'll take it." And of course, as one of the many consequences, Shearson wound up dying and becoming a vampire, which I have discussed in previous videos, but spoiler alert for those of you who have not watched the campaign, but even though I've already mentioned it before, so it's not technically a spoiler, but I'm saying spoiler alert anyway. So, there's actually a ton of different ways for you to actually become more involved and fit in with the group, and I haven't covered all of them. I've just kind of covered some of the ones that I've actually done myself. So find some new ones, and when you do, put them in the comments section. Tell us how it worked out for you. And so, till next time, if you like this video, click the like button. If you love this video, if you love the other videos I've done so far, click the subscribe button. I mean, you probably know how YouTube works by now. Just how the whole YouTube social media thing works. So like and subscribe, and you can catch You can see Shearsm and Company in action on twitch.tv/ElmerFudGames, double M, double D, every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 Eastern, and it's all the different time zones I feel like giving right now. And you can also find us on twitch.tv/JustSomeGuardians, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. No, let me backtrack. 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 10:30 Eastern, for our weekly recap show where we actually discuss the previous session and how we feel like the campaign's going and what's kind of going through our different characters' heads and whatnot. And clear the air about a few things like the aforementioned contentious relationship between Shearsm and Jayag. Again, you can catch us there then. And until then, good night and happy gaming.